Woohoo.
Loretta, great to be chatting with you today. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Hello, Elizabeth. Great to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to just dive into our conversation. But we always start the episodes off because I know you believe in a lot of inspiration, motivation too. So
Yes.
this is my Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. It's like a collection of quotes and things that have resonated for me as a caregiver that now I share with other caregivers through a
Awesome.
PDF. And let's see what your quote says today, Loretta. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. It says, "You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes,
Mm.
you can steer yourself any direction you choose." And we love a good rhyme, and that's from Dr. Seuss,
Mm-hmm.
actually. You know, brains in your head, feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose.
Your shoes.
What does
Mm-hmm.
that make you think of when you think of caregiving and self-care? And
Sometimes you need to use your brain and walk away.
oh, yeah.
And I think that is, sort of caregiving wrapped up in one. Your brain is usually always saying you need to be doing this and this and this and this. Okay, and there's never nothing on that list. So sometimes you just have to put your feet in those shoes and choose to go outside, whether it's 5 minutes for a walk or to get ice cream or whatever. I think there are lots of times, sometimes when we hear from caregivers, some of what we hear is, I'm spinning out of control and all that. And a lot of times that is because we don't walk away for a minute when we should.
Yeah, it's true. We can get in our own way sometimes. I know I was guilty of that during
Yes,
different caregiving seasons. And we feel like we're, in the right place, but
we
sometimes it
do.
is good to just kind of stop and assess and figure out what's going on. Well,
Mhm.
I know a little bit about you, Loretta, but I know that some people might just be meeting you for the first time. I know you cared for your mom and you
Yeah.
called her affectionately Wonder Woman. I love that. I hope my kids call me Wonder Woman someday. And,
All right.
and then you've also cared for other people, but tell us a little bit about your caregiving
Ah,
experience.
so yeah, even before, my first practice, and it really was practice, there was classes and everything, was my grandmother. And we made this team, she had colon cancer, so she needed to have the operation where you have the colostomy bag. So you had to watch a video and then practice on the dummy how to do it. And we were going to be doing this in shifts. So we knew that was a start.
Wow.
And that's probably the first time I have ever told that story. But somebody else asked me recently who knew I went to a funeral for a person who was a neighbor years and years ago in the place where I grew up in DC. And somebody was mentioning once when my grandmother fell down and we all had to help her up. That was really how we began to realize something was going on with her. And so she was like, and she said something like, "Y'all took such good care of her." I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was the beginning of my thing, because we had this little sign up sheet and you would sign up for the shift that you want to do.
Amazing.
But you had to know how to do that bag. And I remember my sister missed the class. And so I had to do her shift one time until she took the class, because you couldn't do it unless you did it, because that could
You
cause
were being a
massive
nurse practically.
infection. Yeah, if you didn't do it anyway. So then fast forward the years, not that many years. I think that was probably 98-ish, 1998 or so. And my mom was diagnosed in 2006, so not that far apart. And so you learn you can't do it by yourself, and some of those kinds of things. So my mom was diagnosed. That was a weird
With dementia,
time.
correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
And right around 2 weeks after my mother was diagnosed with dementia, my sister was diagnosed with MS.
Oh,
And I had been, we knew my mom had something, and I had told my sister I was going with her to the appointment. Um, but my sister was having all kinds of issues and lost her sight for a while. And we just couldn't figure out. She ended up getting fired from her job. I didn't know you could fire somebody who was sick, but okay. And so I was
yes.
trying to take care of them. Oh, she was head of Head Start in Maryland. And so it was a, big job and everything. So anyway, I knew this wasn't going to go well. And after it was finally, diagnosed, what it was, I took her to live with my sister, to live with my niece, because I knew I couldn't take care of them both. My sister was
Oh.
already she already needed, help. So that, was a thing. So I did long distance caregiving for her, and then caregiving with my mom. I talk about it in the book some, but I don't talk about that that much. But some people who know me well know that all happened in the space of a few weeks. And then we called it the
Mm.
trifecta. And then a couple weeks after that, my mother's little sister, who was 19 years younger, she and my sister were only 3.5 years apart, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And they said she
Lord.
would live 6 months, and she died. And she died. We took care of her, and so it was just
You're a
2000,
serial caregiver. That's what I call serial.
2006 was horrible. And
Mm.
one of the reasons why, one of my greatest lessons is caregiving is kind of have a backup plan. We had always assumed, you should never assume, that my aunt the youngest one, would be
Mm.
around to help us, the rest of the cousins, with our moms. And it did not play out that way. And so, it really was just, us. So I think right at the beginning, you learn, a lot of interesting
Yeah.
lessons.
Were
Like,
you
wow,
working? Were
I
you?
still, yeah. And the great part about when my mom was first diagnosed, I had just started a job 2 weeks before her diagnosis, and it was 2 blocks from my job where she lived. Yeah. So I could go up there and have lunch. And that was the coolest job ever. And everybody knew about the diagnosis and everything. And, it was
You
cool. And it
felt
was
like your work
supportive.
environment was supportive for you?
Yes, very much so. And
Okay, good.
even the job I had after that, they were as well. So yeah, I didn't quit my job until COVID. During COVID, so many caregivers were calling me, Elizabeth, that I quit my job.
Mm.
That's how I ended up quitting my job.
Yeah, well, you and I have a similar story there. I was
Yeah,
working
yeah,
and I resigned in May of 2021. I think we were part of the Great Resignation, Loretta. That's
we
what,
were.
yeah,
We
and
absolutely were.
you get clarity in those times of what's
You
going
do.
on, and it's like, no, this is listen, if it were easy, everyone would do it. And
Everybody would be doing it.
I know you're pounding it like I'm pounding it. And
Yeah.
we're definitely not all in it for the money, but we do have to make a living.
We do.
But helping caregivers is definitely something that we share. And
Yes.
glad to have you as a peer in this space. When you reflect back like on your caregiving
Mhm.
journey and
Yep.
various journeys, really, like what were some of these key resources, tools, strategies that you felt like in hindsight were really helpful for you that you would want to fast track other people to sooner rather than later?
So the first was kind of funny, the Alzheimer's Association. I didn't know anything about dementia and Alzheimer's and all that, and so I think on the way out of the doctor's office there was a little brochure or something. I guess I picked it up, and on the back of it, it talked about some seminars or something, free. You could go. Not all of them were free, but some of them were. And I probably went to every one of those, like the first couple of months. I'm sure they were like, here come that girl again. Because I was always there. Like I'm sitting in the front row and I'm learning all this stuff. Oh my
Uh,
God. So yeah, like you're gonna hear better or make it better if you sit in the front. But anyway, so I did that. And all of the checklists and things they have in the documents, AARP, same thing, the prepare to care, all the different documents you get. And you learn about, all the things that you need. I was a list kind of girl anyway. I come from the security industry where you have to, when people's safety are, at risk, you have to follow different things like a fire alarm. You did the fire drills in school. So yeah, we did
mm-hmm.
drills and we did all that stuff. So you plan for those kind of things. So I tried to approach my caregiving role in that same way. What do we need? When are we going to need it? How are we going to get out? We'll get in, stay in, as the case may be. And so I think that was it. The one resource I would say I wish I had had, there are so many things you don't know, So I had never heard of the waiver. It's a Medicaid waiver program. It is a low-income program where if seniors are going to have difficulty paying their rent or whatever, it's a program designed to keep people in their homes longer instead of going to long-term care, which most low-income people could never afford anyway. So I didn't know about that. I knew that depending on how long this journey was, my mother was going to outlive my money. It was as simple as that. So trying not to go bankrupt down the road,
So you had already spent through her money. Now she's on to your money.
Yeah. So, not all of it, but like when it first started out, after she ran out of, her savings, she had quite a bit of savings. So we ran through that. And then, so I would say that was year 4 or 5, I guess. And then after 3 years after her diagnosis, so 2009, I finally learned of this resource. I'm like, oh, this is great. I didn't write the book till
Who shared it with you? Who shared the resource?
I went to one of these caregiver summits. I believe it was in Baltimore. I think it was right along that time when I met some of the people that I work with now at Johns Hopkins. And so that's how they had a table. And I was like, oh. So
like, why is it so hard? My point of asking you this question, Loretta, is like, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to, like, it's so fragmented, and it's, and your story starts back, years ago. Mine starts years ago. We're still kind of there where like caregivers are showing up in the offices and they are just trying to scavenger and duct tape it and like put it all together until they hopefully stumble on someone like you or me or another, speaker or coach that can fast track it to it. So it's like, we need to do better here.
We do. And so I was on that list. So 2009, when I put my name on that list, there were 23,800 people on the list in front of us.
In your state of Maryland, because this is a state specific
and
program.
It was run out of Baltimore at the Department of Aging. And it took 8 years and 6 months. 8 years, 6 months.
Did your mom did she even get to benefit from this?
Yes. Okay. Every year they would call and say, do you want to remain on the list? Don't take my name off that list. Yes, they would call you every year. And then when they called you, so the first clue that you're getting close to the top. And this is a really sad list and a really sad situation, Elizabeth, because in the back of your mind, you are waiting for 23,000 people to die. Or
some
their
money.
Adult child comes from Atlanta and says, okay, mom, you coming to live with me. So they pack up your stuff and take you out of the state. Those are the only 2 ways people got off.
Although in Georgia, we have a wait list as well. Like last I heard, it was 7,000 people. So maybe,
they stopped taking names here a couple of years ago. I don't know what the status is now. I mean, they were never gonna, clear that up. And so it was interesting, the financial impact that people had, because when we first were adding to her rent at the group home and thing where she lived, we were just probably doing 300 or 400, 500, then it went to 700, 900. And by the time we got to 2015-ish, we were paying $1,500 a month toward her rent. And that was cool when my husband was still alive. That was less cool when he died.
You're on one income. Yeah.
So you're kind of like, oh, I love it. But thankfully, the book came out. My first book came out in 2013. And so every speech I gave and every book I sold went to pay for my mom's care. And it was so funny. My mother's favorite thing to say was, I have to pay my own way. I'm thinking, yeah, girl, you keep thinking that.
She just thought this was like magic. And I can imagine the stress level for you, Loretta. And
that was crazy.
I'm sorry for your loss of your husband and your various loved ones. And it
got down to me and her, which was the win. See, this is what we get, Elizabeth. Me and my sister used to joke all the time that my mother was gonna outlive all of us. She was the oldest of 4, and so she outlived the sisters, and her other child, her son-in-law. You're like, this is so crazy. My sister and my husband died on the same day, 5 years apart.
Wow.
Yep, July 17th. And
Loretta, that's my birthday.
no way. July 17th. Girl, I'm gonna call you on your birthday because that is a nasty day for me.
I just
So,
got chills from that. July
isn't that crazy?
17th
Five,
is a
five.
death anniversary for two of your people.
Yes, the people. And it was interesting. And so my one of my other biggest lessons, and I was just talking about this the other day in where was I the other day? Rochester, New York. And we did some Lego stuff, but we were building it around the four greatest lessons I learned from being my mom's mom. And the second one was sort of be prepared for everything, but be ready for anything. And
Yes.
have a backup plan. I didn't have a backup. I knew I wasn't sure how long my sister had a lot of illnesses, as did I over the years. But when she got MS, they said when you get in your 50s, and she only lived like 3.5 years or so. So it went pretty, fast. But I still thought I'd be fine because, I had Tim. And so we were Team Veney. It was so cool.
Team
And
V.
so when he died, I was like, oh, it was, I can't
When
even
did
really
your
describe
husband
it.
die, Loretta?
Uh, Say again?
What year did your husband die?
2016. So it's been
Oh,
7 years. So I still had 7 years to go with her. And by then it was just me and her. So I was so terrified, literally, of getting COVID. But I'm all she had then. I do have, um, a stepdaughter and a granddaughter who live here. But, I never really had to ask her to do anything for my mom or anything like that. So I wouldn't have any expectation if something happened to me that she would take care of my mom. That's just, not a thing. And so I was thinking, what do I do? What's the backup plan? So that was, one of the big struggles. It worked out incredibly well for me because when he died, my church had put together a support group just for me. And what they asked me to do was to write down all the things Tim did for my mother. And each one of them took a thing. So yeah. So and what was really amazing about that was that Tim did everything for her, and how we really were a team because I was still working, as I said. And so he was a retired DC cop, so he retired at like 47, something like that, 46. Oh my God, he was young. And so
yes.
he would pick up, if my mom had a doctor's appointment, he would pick her up at the non-assisted living. He would drive her to the doctor's appointment. I would leave work, meet them at the doctor's appointment, do the doctor's appointment, and then I go back to work. They went to the mall and lunch and to the museum. They were inseparable. I was, when he died, I was like, what am I going to tell my mother? My mother had forgotten by the time my sister died. My mother had forgotten she had two kids, and her being in California, she hadn't seen her for 3 or 4 years.
Mm.
And we couldn't do FaceTime because my sister lost her vocal abilities fairly early on. And so when she did talk, she sounded like she was drunk, and that scared my mother. She
Oh.
slurred, so we couldn't even, do that. So I would talk to my sister and give her updates and stuff, and she would nod, even if she couldn't ask questions, or sometimes she would write it down and hold it up, and then we would do that. And I was there when she died. I flew to LA, and I saw
Wow.
her a lot, actually. And
Oh,
so
I just want to hug you, Loretta. I just want to
that
put
was
my arms around you and give you a big
yes,
hug. And yet, at the same time, like I know you radiate life. Like I've heard you
I
speak, and
do. Yeah.
I've watched you on different things. And I know people listening though, as I want to backtrack a little bit to something you said, is like it took you eight years and 6 months
Six
for
months.
the Medicaid waiver. You're down to a single income. You don't have a lot of financial support options. Like
Right.
the question they're thinking right now is like, what did she do? Like, how did she bridge the gap between that and your Medicaid waiver? Like,
Oh, that's a great. So yeah, I mean, the thankfully, by the time we got off the list, then they take, her little, I think her monthly income from her 31 years in the federal government was like $1,300. I mean, you can't buy a closet these days with that. And
no.
so that was her. And oh, let's not forget I think 100 at one point 150. I think the most she ever got from Social Security was $200 a month, and that was right before she died. And so I don't know what you're supposed to do with those small amounts of money, but whatever. So for me, really it was about just doing the speaking and all of that, so I could comfortably do all those things without her having to, worry about anything. Because, you still had to buy the pens, because when she couldn't live
Yes.
alone, she went to a group home. Well, you had to buy all the supplies and things, until you got into those programs. So for me, it was really, I missed this phase when I had a stepdaughter, because when I met her, she was 8. So she was past that diaper. So, that was my first foray into having to go get, the pens and
Yes.
all that kind of stuff, missed the wipes, all the stuff I hadn't ever done. And so, yeah, it was just an amazing learning curve. But in hindsight, you think you and your spouse are going to live forever. And so Tim's passing just so suddenly, it was just such a rude awakening that you're kind of like, wow, what could I have done differently? I do get that question a lot. What would you have done differently? And I don't think I would have done anything differently per se. What I would have done, I think, is, and I did some of that. I was going to say, have some people who could step in. So, like, for example, I tried not to travel too much when my mom was still alive. I mean, I did travel, but I would try to only be gone like a night or so.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can stay a couple of days and hike and see the town and all that stuff. Whereas before I would rush back. So she, and by then she
Yeah.
wouldn't even know I was gone, but I tried doing that. So, but if I had, there were a couple of ladies at church who were friends but were also occupational therapists. And so when I would go away, they would take over some matching stuff for her to do and stuff like that. So that was cool. So they made sure somebody was visiting her, even if I wasn't in town. So that was good. So I would have done more of that. Like I tell people, I actually show a couple of schedule things where you can have your little team, your village. I have a picture that I show of this humongous mountain range in Switzerland where we hiked. And in my book, it says, in my second book, which is mostly pictures, the caption I added to that picture, the mountains are just gorgeous. And there's a little village. You see all these little houses, like 20 some houses in this little
Mm.
cluster. And if I'm doing it in person, I will have people get out a piece of paper and write down all the names of the people in their village. I said, because look at these mountains are wonderful. I said, but when it snows, they can't get out of there. So they have to help each other cook and somehow get, pharmacy to drugs or whatever the older people need. So they depend on each other, in this little village, because if they don't help each other, nobody succeeds. So I tell people to write out who's in your village and don't wait till it snows to figure out who your village is. So that's my,
Yeah.
and because the caption is more like, these mountains are gorgeous, but they can also feel heavy when you
Yeah.
don't have
And
the right
fearful.
support.
Yes.
I mean, it is too much. It was on the Sound of Music tour. And, we don't even have on hiking clothes. We hiking, all these 80-year-old people who grew up there passing us. And
I
we're
did
like
that
helping to
Sound of
talk.
Music tour too. I love
Oh my
it.
God.
I love that area.
It's crazy, right?
It's amazing. You've touched on so many different things. I love the concept of the care village
Yeah.
and the mountains. You
Yeah.
touched on the fact about paid speakers, and I know you and I are trying to like lead the charge
Yeah.
potentially with some other
Yeah.
people on like paid professional speaking for caregivers. And
Yeah.
look, people, like we've got our masters in caregiving from the experience that we
We
have,
do.
and we
Mm-hmm.
can really help a lot of people, whether they're employers or
Yes.
organizations
Mm-hmm.
or caregiving expos and lunch and learn. So
Yes.
tap into that, and don't expect it for free. Like we've got bills to pay, and sometimes
True.
in your
Very
case, you're
true.
probably still trying to catch up from some of that. Use
What's
your expenses that
interesting,
was for you
I
for
think,
later.
yes, because you do need it, because you don't know that's the other thing. I'm gonna be 65 in a couple of weeks, so you're kind of like, okay, now you get to that point where I won't say how much longer you're gonna do this, because I mean I have a ton of energy, and I think I was sick for a long time when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and into my late 30s. I was sick for a long time, And so I was like, okay, maybe I got all that out of the way earlier. So this is like the best part of my life. But yeah, I think that's true. What I would say about the paid speaking is this. I think that um we are always willing to make concessions. So if I do things for state people, a lot of them have very limited budgets. I'm cool with that. I do encourage people to get sponsors and things like that. So I mean, we can
We'll work with you.
work through it. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think there is a thing. Sometimes I can only think of one thing that I ever turned down because of a monetary thing. They wanted me to do a day and a half, well, of all day speaking the first day, and then this other thing the second day. And I was like, oh, so I just did that in Seattle, but it was a wonderful, conference. And after I signed the thing, I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But it was the best day ever. I hadn't spoken all day in a long time.
Yes,
And
it's a lot.
it was amazing, but it was amazing. And there was, big luncheon, in the middle. So you had that. And I wasn't sure how that would play out, but it was amazing. And people wrote all kinds of things. They sent me every evaluation, and everybody talked about my energy. It's like she was as good, if not better, in the afternoon than she was in the morning. Because I'm a morning person. I say that all the time. But it was quite the thing. So I think if people keep their expectations reasonable, then yes, we can work, because you
Yeah.
don't want to. I can hear my mother saying, do it anyway, because somebody in that audience really needs it. And then when you go and you do it, even if it was kind of like against your better judgment, or you knew somebody was taking advantage of you,
Yeah.
you met a person there who was like in tears or something, who really needed it, and then you're really glad
Yeah,
you
and
did
maybe
it.
there's
So
other
yeah,
ways, like you said, like sometimes they buy books
yeah,
instead of the speaker fees, or in addition, sometimes
absolutely.
you can get recommendations and reviews, or maybe they're going to share video content that's going to help you with your
Very
social, or so
the
there is a lot of way to
the
slice it.
video things I have gotten. I went to Portland just a few weeks ago, and one of the things I loved about that is that I was going to miss the conference, but my suggestion was, because my cousin lived right down the street, I was like, what? I'm gonna be in Portland. What if we recorded it and then you play it at the conference? And
Yeah.
they were like, oh. And then I wore the same thing. I was in New York that day doing a Lego thing for the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. And it was going to be over right when on the Pacific coast, right when they were finishing up the thing. So I leave the
You're
Alzheimer's
like, I'm
Foundation thing.
here. Yeah,
I
yeah.
run into this conference room. They put me in,
Aw.
and I got on the same outfit. So they like, and you can hear the music playing, and here she is live, and I'm like,
And here's the thing, Loretta,
it
like
was so funny.
family caregivers have lots of skills. And one of
They
them
do.
is that they are very creative
Yeah,
problem solvers. And so I double
they
dog
are.
dare you to bring a problem to a caregiver that they can't kind of like try to figure out how to navigate through this,
Exactly.
because they have
They
had to
do.
show up and be resilient and just
Mhm.
get through it. But let's talk about you've mentioned kind of the Legos. We've talked about some, and I want to kind of dive into some of those,
Yes.
like a
Yeah.
creative care. Like that's what I really, when I think of you, like the creative care tools that
It
you
is.
share with people. How did all of this come about? Like how did this creativity and Lego life come about for you?
Yeah, so the Lego thing came about because my mom, bought me a box of Legos when I was 5. I don't remember the day or anything, but I remember being a very little person and having Lego bricks. And so she did not buy, I'm sure it was because she couldn't afford it. I felt bad when I got to be of age where I realized how much Legos cost. Like, oh my gosh. But she just bought us a box of just mixed up bricks, right? Not the plane, train, automobile kind of thing. Just she wanted us to use our own imaginations, right? So what it became for us was just a family thing. You know how people sat around and played Monopoly and all that? Our thing was Lego. And so if some boy didn't like me at school, we built with Lego. If she had a hard day at work, we built with Lego. I mean, if I got all A's, we built with Lego. I mean, Lego was good, bad, ugly, it was that thing. But what I noticed right away, today I would say, my mom had a lot of anxiety and depression. My dad left when I was born. It's a long story. Turns
Mm-hmm.
out he was gay. And I think I was born. I think it was my mother's attempt to win him back, so to speak, because there was 9 years between me and my sister. So when I was born, I came early, so they weren't expecting me. So when I show up, my dad's the only one there, so he delivers me. And I was born in a blizzard. And a couple of days later, he went to the store supposedly to get milk and never came back.
Wow.
So my mother was obviously devastated by that. And my
Single
sister,
parent. Yeah.
and until my sister was about 45 or 50, we didn't have a good relationship because my sister blamed me. Now, if you're 10, almost 10 years old, and your dad leaves when this baby shows up, my
Yes.
sister always said, she kept telling
Yeah.
my mother, send her back, send her back,
Send her
not
back and
knowing where
dad'll come
babies come
back.
from.
I know. Kids
So,
were so innocent.
and so anyway, so that was that. So I think she had a lot of anxiety and depression. But what I noticed is that whenever we were building with Lego, she was very calm. She didn't need her, what my sister and I called, what I now would say was probably an antidepressant. Um, she she was so relaxed with the Legos. We had such a good time, and we could talk about anything. And so fast forward to her, the day of her diagnosis. And we get in the car, and of course she's devastated, Elizabeth. And so, I had this bag of Legos in my car, and I had a little lap desk kind of thing tethered to my dashboard. So to keep my mom calm in the car, instead of her saying, I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home 1,000 times, I would get the Legos out and she would build. Well, that day I asked her to build how she felt about her dementia diagnosis. And she didn't exactly do that. So instead, she gets out her little Lego, one of these little Lego people. I don't have the hair on it like she had. So, you have the little thing. And I asked her to build, how she felt. And instead, she pops the head off that thing. She holds it up and she says, I feel like in a few years, I'm going to lose my head. And I put that on social media and people went crazy. Like, oh my gosh, look at how she chose to represent that.
Express.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Were you
And I did
already
all
a
kinds of things.
Lego
I was
serious
not.
play?
So that,
Okay.
nope. So that's a great question. Okay, so she was diagnosed in 2006, and around 2008, 9, I started looking into this thing called Lego Serious Play. And it was designed, has nothing at all to do with dementia or caregiving. It was designed for one purpose. That was to help businesses have better success. So in other words, they wanted to catch Mattel as the #1 toy company in the world, and they were not that. So they were asking people to look into it. So they got some academicians in the UK and said, how can we be like better, stronger, faster? We got this great toy. And they had flirted with bankruptcy at one point, but it wasn't then. So they asked some people to see how they could do this thing. So they came up with this theory that's magnificent. So, how you go to a regular meeting, one or two people talk, the rest of the people sit there and nod a lot, right? And so you got the CEO, the COO, all the initials, and they make all the decisions. And you know how sometimes we've worked places and you think to yourself, I could do a better job than that. You did. I always ask people, raise your hands if you've ever thought that I could do a better job than that person. You're like, but nobody ever asks you what you think. So what Lego Serious, how it is designed is the motto of Lego Serious Play is it ensures that everyone is included and that all voices are heard. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to use this for dementia. It doesn't say all voices except people with dementia.
Right. And they were thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility long before probably anybody else was, it sounds like.
But yeah, they didn't have those people until later. But yeah, that was it. So now, that's how it works. So now when you have a meeting, you give people this task to build with these Lego bricks, and then they build it and they tell their story. So they hold up this little thing, you're pointing out to all the little parts of it. Here's some little Lego thing. This orange piece reminds me of the sunrises we watched together, whatever. And you tell your story. So
you're
you go around the
connecting
room.
basically over
Yes.
Legos. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's
so you
forming
tell your whole story. And it was designed to help businesses. So if I go to a assisted living place, and I've done this, and you ask everybody in the room to build a model that represents, we know this is a great place to work, but if you could add or change one thing to make it even better, what would that be? And I mean, it's always the people without the title that has the best answers. In one case, the woman's title was, she was the morale person, I guess is the great way to put it, but her title was like coffee cart. She would go, it's just like it sounds, she would go around this little cart, pushing this cart. It had cups of coffee and tea and granola bars and whatnot. So, she knew everything. So when we went around the room, I'm sitting next to the CEO. She has like the best idea ever. He looks at me, how long has she been here? 12 years. And they had never had a conversation. And
Yeah.
she ended up getting a big bonus and everything for that idea. Now, would that have ever come up? And especially young people say this to me all the time. If they're in an organization where most of the people are, in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, and you got the little 20-year-olds running around, people are like, oh, what do they know? They know a lot, and you probably should talk to them. So, but they
Yeah, they
don't.
bring different
They
experiences,
do.
different
And
stories,
so
different.
most of the
Yes.
time when they have their idea and they're trying to share their idea, nobody listens. And this one kid, same kind of situation, he had the best idea. He wanted in the adult day program, he wanted to have dinner. His suggestion was to have like a movie night where I'm not your caregiver that day. We just two friends watching a movie, right? So the adult children whose parents were in this adult day,
Mm.
they came and they cooked spaghetti and everybody had popcorn and they all sat in the recliners. They invited me and they all sat, and the boy was so proud. He was like, probably his first job out of high school. I think he was 19 or 20. He calls his mom from the Lego room. He said, Mom, they took my idea. They did my idea. So he
Yeah.
was
And
so
oh, the
proud.
places he's gonna go from there with
Yeah,
that
it was so
confidence from
cool.
that
And
idea.
I went to movie night,
Yes.
and an executive director said to me later, I would never, ever have thought of doing that, ever. Where once you're
Yes.
not saying, take your pills. Oh, you didn't do your PT today. We just some friends watching a movie. And the dynamics in that room, everybody was hugging. It was amazing.
Amazing.
And that
So
never would
can
have come up without
no.
that.
So does
Mhm.
the world need more Lego serious play facilitators
So
for
funny you asked
the care
that.
economy? Yeah.
Yeah, I won a MAUD award this year and for innovative
MAUDE, right?
uh-huh, uh-huh,
Yep.
for innovative ways of communicating with people. Because my mother was of the mindset that if you find a solution that works, you don't keep it to yourself, you share it with other people. It's as simple as that. And so I started doing it other than with my mother at adult days. And I've had people talk again that hadn't talked in a long time. And so, I just started, it just took off from there. So not only giving them tasks to build favorite memory, I've had people talk, after 3 or 4 years about a cruise they went on 15 years ago that happened at Sunrise Senior Living. That was a crazy day. And then when the niece asked her aunt why she never talked about this cruise that they had gone on, she just all of a sudden started talking while they're building this cruise ship with Lego bricks.
Yes.
And the whole place just fell apart. People were crying, people were taking pictures. It was craziness. And so the niece looks at her aunt and says, Auntie, you remember the cruise? And she was like, of course I remember it. And she was looking at her like, she said, you never talk about it. And the aunt said, you never asked me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
we
that
just,
it's one of the things, like, I feel like when you're talking, saying that, like the my journal is a prompted journal. One of the
yes,
things I've seen that people do with it
exactly.
is use the questions to
Yes,
connect and ask other people, because
absolutely.
you are
Absolutely.
so, like, as caregivers, we're sometimes just doing that. We
Right.
need to just live and connect and enjoy these
Exactly.
people's company. And then one of the partners I've had in the past, that I'll include in the show notes too, is like connectivities box, like where it's a box
Yes,
that gets
that's a good
delivered.
one. Yeah.
Same kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's like, these aren't about like completing the little DIY things. In the same way,
Yes.
it's not about, for you, like doing the Lego thing. It is the connection
It
that
is.
is coming from this creative play. And what you're also reminding me of, Loretta, is like my mom, she had some cognitive things at the end of life. She was bedridden. But you're reminding me of a lot of really good times I had with my mom, where we would
Yeah.
play games. We would play Connect Four or Uno,
Yes.
or we would do adult coloring. We
Yeah.
didn't use Legos. I'm kind of regretting that, but we used Play-Doh. Like, we did a
That
lot of
was
stuff
good
with,
too.
yeah,
That's
a
what
lot
I
of
mean.
stuff with
It's
Play-Doh.
I tell people it's just you have to find your thing. It might not be Legos, but and it's so funny because now I get the question all the time because everybody looks at my earrings. Oh, you got on Lego earrings? Oh, you bracelets? I do have a Lego bracelet. And people are like, oh my God, Legos. So everybody asks about it. So I get to the airport, I get these huge bags of Lego bracelets. People are like, oh my, are those Legos in there? The TSA, some in TSA call me the Lego lady. And so it just kind of stuck.
You are
So
the Lego lady.
so
Yeah.
it's kind of a cool thing. Who wouldn't want to be that? And, to end up, having Robin Roberts say your name on Good Morning America because it's a Lego bricks. That's a thing. So you're kind of like, oh, didn't
Yes,
see
I'm
that
going to
coming.
link to some of your articles, and that Robin
Yeah,
Roberts thing is a great thing. I mean, listen,
it
as
was.
solopreneurs, if someone's listening and you have like access to media stuff, like earned media for us is
It's
everything. Like
amazing. It is.
we cannot pay like the big dogs play with, paying for
So true.
social ads and all that. So help the
So
folks
true.
out with the earned media opportunities. You've got 3 books, I think, right?
I
You
had the
have
coloring book we did for her 90th birthday, colors flowing from her mind. And then I had the picture book of all these places my husband Tim and I had gone over the years. That was one of the most amazing things, that he's not here, or he had helped pick out, the 150 some odd pictures that are in the book. And so of course I dedicated it to him. We both took all the pictures that are in the book, and with the sayings. And so he knew that it was going to be in, but it came out like 3 or 4 weeks after he died. And so
wow.
I know. But yeah, he knew exactly what was going to be in it, and these were just photos that we really love. So one of the things that is at least acceptable about him not being here is that we didn't wait till we retired to travel. We went 3/4 of the way around the world. So that part
Amen.
makes it a lot better. So
You
so that was pretty.
you didn't wait till the end of
We did
life
not.
to live. You like
We
live.
just kept
And the
we
Millers are
just
the
kept
same
going.
as
Mm-hmm.
team Veney, is that we travel. We
Yeah,
experience life. And what I love about that is that you get to use all the senses. Like it just
you
heightens
do.
everything. Yes.
You absolutely
The
do. And one of the
connections.
reasons why I loved my trip to Europe this a couple months ago was because, especially you had far in front of us in terms of dementia, and how it's the much less stigma there than here. So it was very cool talking to carers over there, as they call them. And
Yep.
so that was a neat experience. And then of course going to Lego headquarters, where one of the guys who helped create Lego Serious Play, and he was one of the speakers. He was going around to meet all the people he didn't know, because they have this conference every year, and they were doing building resilience this year, which is one of the things I work on with Hopkins, who is probably my largest client. And it, so he came around, he gets to me, and he says, "Hi, I don't think I've seen you before. What do you do?" So I say, I use Lego Serious, because he said, "How do you use Lego Serious Play?" And I said, "Oh, I use it with people with dementia." Say that again. I repeated. He said, "Do you have photos of you doing that?" I said, "Yeah." He
You
said,
got
"Let
a
me see some."
lot.
He said, "Let me see some photos." I flashed through some photos. He's just saying, and then, before, so the conference was going to start. He said, "We'll talk more." And he went over to say, he was talking. I knew they were talking about me. I'm one of the few people doing there's that, and I had looked for somebody for a lot. There's nobody else really doing it in this way. So, and the reason he was so struck by it, turns out I had made these little fidget toy things, and I had given one to each of the conference organizers. And so, this has kept my mom sane in the car in DC traffic. So you
And
can match up
by
the
the way, if you're
colors.
listening, she's showing this on the video. So you can
Yeah,
go to the show notes and see the
and
video
see
of
that.
Loretta.
And it's
Yeah.
really cool. And so I make these in all kinds of colors and sizes and stuff. Anyway, so I gave one to each of the participants, and he got his. I have pictures of it. He's spinning it. And he said, "Would you be upset if I gave this to?" So he explains that this guy he used to work with for years, and one of his best friends ever has it. And he said, "Would it be okay with you if I gave it to him?" And I was like, "No, that would be awesome." And I never expected the man to send me. He sent me a picture, and the
Oh,
guy's face was like, it
yes.
was,
Like
it was
it's
the
listen, dementia is not a death sentence. Like it is
it's not. It
there,
was
people can,
his face was priceless.
yes, you can live amazingly with dementia. And
It was cool.
as you're talking to Loretta, I'm thinking like I don't know if you know this about me, but I have a brother that's got a developmental and intellectual
I did
disability.
know that.
He's 60 years old.
I did
And
know that.
we with the siblings, like my parents are deceased now. So it's
Right.
us figuring it out for Tom.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I'm going to try the Legos as a holiday gift this year. And we do our Tom Tuesdays. And I'm going to see if I'm going to do my own little experiment to see if Legos can
Please let
bring
me
Tom
know.
and I together. Yes.
Please
Because
let me know.
I think it's still a brain thing, right? He's neurodivergent. Like
It
it's,
is. I
yes.
actually did a thing last year. Had never heard of this place. It's like 30 minutes from my house. And it's called Brain Injury Services. It's exactly as it sounds. So kids who, fell off their skateboard, ran into a tree skiing,
TBIs and stuff.
somebody,
Yes.
anything like car accident, whatever. Yeah. And I did it for their staff. And an activity coordinator saw it on somebody's something, and they went back to work saying, you got to have this woman on. So I did the whole staff. And so funny you asked, should there be more people doing this? So now I'm training other people to become facilitators.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that for the first time this
Gosh, I'm
weekend
tempted to be like,
in
sign me
Texas.
up. And I'm like, girl, you can't not do one other thing. Like you
I
need to
know,
just,
right? I know.
yes. Let
I know.
Loretta
You
train.
cannot do it.
I cannot do another thing.
Very
Loretta,
true.
you're amazing. Like I love the stuff that you're doing. I love that you put joy in your life. Like this is coming out, this episode in 2024. So
Yay.
one of the things we do every year is like the 20 to 24 list is what we're going to call it. It is a way to encourage caregivers to infuse more joy in their day. This is not about resolutions, things like that. This is like, maybe you want to play with Legos on your 20 for 24 list, or travel, or do something that is going to like infuse joy. So I'm going to link to that in the show notes. And and a lot of the things, the book links that we talked about, and some of the stuff that we didn't get to, like I'm going to put some of the other things I've, done my detective stuff on Loretta to prepare for this, but we got to save a few minutes for the lightning round. So if you're good with it, okay, here we go. You're ready.
No pressure.
What celebrity would you choose to spend the day with?
Oprah.
And why?
I would love to, she has her little favorite things. I'd like to do a list with her. I'd like to do like a serious play with her.
Yes,
too.
If Oprah does it, everyone's doing it. Yeah. So like,
I like that.
Yeah.
That would be my celebrity. Yeah.
I love it. And I feel like we need a whole talk show around caregiving. So think of Loretta, and not someone else needs to do it, but we're happy to come on
be on it. Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. What's your self-care plan now? Like you're working hard, you're taking care of a lot of people. We can be at risk for getting compassion fatigue ourselves because we hear a lot of heavy stuff. So like, what's your self-care plan?
I love my self-care plan. I'm very proud of it. So my mom died on January 31st of 2022. So I dedicated 2023, of course, to her, but also now that I didn't have to rush back. So here's my plan. If I work 3 days, like I did 3 days of filming, for example, 2.5 days for Home Instead in Nebraska, in Omaha. That's their headquarters. I had never been to Nebraska. So they were nice enough to let me stay some extra days in this beautiful, the hotel was self-care enough. It was this gorgeous place that had been closed for a while that they renovated. I went to the zoo. Who knew Omaha had the number 3 zoo in the whole world? And a woman that I had never met, who was co-moderating a support group, online support group with me, lived outside of Omaha. Me and her spent the entire day at the zoo. And so I'm very proud to say that I stay in place and play as much as I have worked. And that did wonders. The whole Portland part of the trip, when that person said that they would, do the recording, I was going to Portland anyway to see my cousins and stay there after I did a trek through the state of Washington, but I had a day off in between the 7 days I was in the state of Washington. So I hiked where I could see Mount Rainier. Some people who used to live in DC that now live in Seattle met me. They took me on a different hike. I hiked with some people that I didn't know that I met because they didn't have a lot of signs. I was scared I was gonna get lost. They let me tag along with them. And so I'm not afraid to ask people. So
it doesn't sound like it.
I'm really, really, really proud of that, because I was a wreck when I would, fly somewhere, speak, rush back to the airport, fly, and then rush to work the next. Oh my God. I did that for like 4 years. And after my
Yes.
husband died. So it's kind of, that's crazy. So now you can just kind of,
We're staying in play. It's
yeah,
the new
that's me,
philosophy. It's
the
the
new.
Loretta way.
And it
I
will
love it.
continue in 2024. Yeah.
Well, if your travels ever bring you to Atlanta, I want to be your hike partner.
I'm coming we might have to do a thing. I'm coming to Myrtle Beach. It ain't that far.
Yeah, I'll feed you. Will anybody's coming to Atlanta? I need to know about that. So
That's so cool. I'll write that down.
yes, that's amazing. Let's see.
I like that question because I'm doing it. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, looking ahead, I think this is
Mhm.
the kind of be the last question from this is like
Okay.
looking ahead, your to-do list. Like we can get so overwhelmed by everything on our to-do list. How do you make your to-do list more manageable?
So yeah, I think you have to just stay realistic with it. I mean, I look at my calendar sometimes and I'm like, there's something on here like every day. So like when we
Do
hang
you ever
up,
get it all done? That's what I want.
I
I never
do.
get. I
I,
want
I
to.
actually I actually do. So there's a person waiting for me right now walking. So we had chat. I actually thought you were in a different time zone, so I had the time wrong at first. I was like, okay, I can't meet you till because it's at 2:30, not at 1:30 like I thought. Anyway, so yeah. And so I try to make it more realistic. I think sometimes our expectations are too high.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm making
Let's be
sure
real.
I can do because I did drive a couple hours, in one case almost 3 hours to get to a hike I really wanted to do, and it was worth every minute of that drive. And so, yeah, if you don't know when you're ever going to get back that way, I try
Make an
to
effort.
cram it. I try to
I love a
make it
new
all happen.
hiking trail. Like I usually have that on my 20 for
Yeah, I'm
20
coming. I'm
list.
coming to Atlanta, so
I
we can
live near
take you.
Kennesaw Mountain, so that's like a
Oh, I
Civil
know it.
War
Yes,
battlefield, very that it's still
I
well
know that one.
preserved. We don't have many mountains around where I
But
live,
that's okay.
so it's yes. And then we also have a great trail called the Silver Comet Trail that was an old
I do know
railroad
that. I
that
do
they
know that.
paved
I've
and
never done it, but I've heard of it.
yeah, so
I'm gonna
listen,
put that on my
yeah,
list.
it's a good spot, and we got pretty decent weather here all times of year. Well,
You do.
Loretta, is there any other parting words of wisdom? Anything that you were like, oh man, we cannot end this if we don't say this? We need to know.
As I would say, we were just talking about this, in a different way, just manage your expectations. Sometimes our expectations are too high for our loved ones, and then we get too low or too high. Just try to pace yourselves. The one thing I would say that we don't realize when we're in it, there is no expiration date for your caregiving journey. You look in your cabinet and you see stuff expired and you throw it away. Well, you don't get that when your person is diagnosed with whatever it is. In your brother's case, it's not ending. And so and I live next door to a family that is in the same situation. They were twins, but one of them's fine and one of them isn't. And so you go through all that. So if you don't pace yourselves, you are really out of it. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of times we set our expectations so high that they can be unrealistic. So just try to pace yourselves along the journey to give yourself the best chance of not suffering, burnout or any of those other things.
Yes, exactly. How do people find out more information
Oh,
about
it's
what
so
you are?
easy. So
Yeah.
easy. LorettaVeney.com. Doesn't get much easier than that.
Yes, and Veney is Veney. So
Yes.
Loretta, so we'll link to all of that in your show notes page. Loretta, I knew this was going to be a delightful conversation, but you've
Fun.
exceeded my expectations today. So
Exceed expectations.
I'm motivated, and you're making a difference.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yay, this was so much fun. And I'm
Yes.
writing Atlanta down. I might be going that way. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, you never know.
It
Have
will
an
be fun.
amazing rest of your day, Loretta. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for
you
coming on the
too.
show.
Okay. Bye.